So it looks like Captain America is a dud. It looks like it's maybe not going to make the money that it needs to make. And what they need to make is 428 million. So let's go through this whole article from IGN. So I'm going through an article by IGN on IGN.com. So Captain America Brave New World nears 300 million global box office after 68% domestic drop second weekend. Now, a quick aside, I think it really got the boost because it's Black History Month. So I think that's probably why the first weekend it got the boost. But as Black History Month kind of winds down, maybe that's why it started to tank last weekend. Hard to say. According to Deadline, Captain America Brave New World had a production budget of 180 million and has a break-even point of about 425 million. The Anthony Mackie fronted action movie beats estimates with 100 million domestic box office haul over the President's Day weekend, which probably, as I stated, this was for, or really caused by Black History Month, to be honest. But as Black History Month's winding down, the interest is probably going down. But with 28.2 million domestic during its second weekend, and unfortunately, that's probably because through word of mouth, people were like, I don't know about that movie. And then really, like, the chief thing to add to it is that it was mostly about the Hulk. And let's see where we go. So Cap's 68% domestic box office drop, similar to that of 2023's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which unfortunately ended up not breaking even. So if we go on, so yeah, the film earned 63.5 million worldwide over its second weekend, which is not really good. And while Cap is clearly the biggest release of 2025 so far at theaters, it was hoped that its inevitable second weekend drop would be softer given the lack of rival blockbusters in the near future. Senior ComScore analyst Paul Dergarabedian told Variety, "This is the new normal for Marvel movies. There's still no denying these movies have appeal, but a second weekend drop of 68% reflects less audience enthusiasm than you'd expect from Marvel." And really, I would say that that really probably goes back to what they actually did in the movie. Was the movie about Captain America centered things? Or was the movie really filled with Hulk characters? So Deadline, meanwhile, suggested Captain America Brave New World will end up with about 450 million from the global box office. So Captain America Brave New World launched amid poor reviews. IGN's Captain America Brave New World returned to 510. So what IGN themselves said, Captain America Brave New World feels neither brave nor all that new, falling short of strong performances from Anthony Mackie, Harrison Ford, and Carl Lumbly. So in 1998, Mark Waid created the Sam Wilson version of Captain America. The comic book had a run in 1999, and then they brought the comic book back a few decades later. But originally, just so we're clear, this idea was created in 1998, had a comic book run in 1999. The Sam Wilson character as Captain America. So why is that important to mention? That's important to mention because that's not the problem with the movie. So one side note that I'll bring up, and I don't know what they do with blockbusters now, but there used to be a point in the past, really back in the 90s definitely, and maybe in the early 2000s, where Hollywood would hedge these big movies by really using foreign money. And it was a whole process. I'm not going to get deep into it. But I mention it because a lot of times when we read these articles, people are always talking about how much the studios are losing and so forth and so on. But if the studios are doing anything comparable to what they used to do, which is getting foreign investment to hedge on the money that they're spending, especially with these major blockbusters, then they may not be losing as much money as people think. And so, specifically to give an example of what I was just talking about, in the late 90s, the early 2000s, maybe up until 2007, a lot of times what would happen is that a lot of the actual funds would come through like German investors, for example. And that was basically a structure in terms of how the laws were in Germany. Now, that probably shifted, and then I double checked, and I think maybe over some recent years it kind of reverted back to some of this financing. So we're not always clear whether something actually really flopped, because in the old days where Hollywood would fund through German money, a lot of times if the movie didn't do well, it was actually the German investors or the other foreign investors who really took the hit. And then the studios themselves kind of were like, okay. Incidentally, if you like what you heard, like, subscribe. You made it this far. Thanks for watching. I'll see you when I see you.